Hi there, I'm Raina. I showed up to a family reunion I paid for and found an empty room. No hugs, no hellos, just a waitress telling me, "That dinner? Oh, that was yesterday." My mom laughed when I called. That was the night I realized this wasn't just a mistake, it was a pattern. They'd forged my name on loans, used my credit, erased me from the will, and still expected me to foot the bill. I used to think I was the good daughter. Now I wonder, was I just the easiest one to use? Want to know what happened next? Keep watching. I had checked the message 3 times before walking into the restaurant. Friday, 7 p.m., Sterling Grill, Lexington. I didn't misread it. I didn't confuse the dates. I wasn't early or late. I was right on time. The wind that evening had a slight bite, one of those crisp Kentucky fall gusts that made you zip your jacket up halfway just to look like you weren't bothered. I wore a navy wrap dress and low heels. Nothing too flashy, just enough to say, I tried. My makeup was light, hair pulled into a clean bun. I even brought that cranberry lipstick Mom once said made me look serious. Maybe I wanted to be taken seriously, for once. The valet gave me a polite nod. I nodded back, already adjusting the strap on my purse. Inside, Sterling Grill buzzed softly with background jazz and the occasional clink of silverware. The dining room was full, families, couples, a group of young professionals at the bar. But the private room I had reserved? Dark. Door closed, empty. I hesitated before approaching the hostess stand. "Hi," I began. "I'm here for the Elwood family dinner. Private room under Raina Elwood?" The hostess barely glanced at me. "Yes, that was yesterday." I froze. "Excuse me?" She scanned her clipboard and pointed to a note. 16 guests, custom menu, vegan entree for 1. It was Thursday evening. They left a little before 9. I blinked at her, unsure whether it was me or the room that had gone silent. "No, that's not right. I booked it. It was supposed to be tonight. I confirmed it myself with your manager." She gave me a customer service smile, the kind that stays glued, even when someone's clearly unraveling. "I believe your mother handled the rescheduling. It was moved last week." Last week? My heart didn't race, but I could feel a tension pulsing in my teeth, a pressure behind the eyes. I reached into my purse, pulled out my phone, scrolled to the message thread. There it was, Blythe Elwood 2 weeks ago. Dinner, Sterling Grill, fry at 7 p.m. Can't wait to see everyone. I held the screen out to the hostess. This message was never updated. She shrugged, eyes softening just a fraction. "I'm really sorry. They did seem to have a lovely time, though." Of course they did. I stepped away, walked toward the wall, leaned against the polished wood paneling that smelled faintly of furniture wax and artificial cinnamon. I opened my messages. Nothing new, no missed calls, just the silence of being forgotten on purpose. I tapped my mom's name and hit call. It rang twice before she picked up. "Oh, hey, sweetie." Her voice was syrupy. "Everything okay?" I kept my tone flat. "Where is everyone?" A pause. I could hear chatter in the background. Then came the laugh. Small, guilty, too light. "Oh, honey, that was last night. We figured you weren't coming." I didn't respond. She continued. "But don't worry, we brought you some leftovers. There's even cake." Leftovers, from the dinner I paid for. "I booked that room, Mom. I paid the deposit." "I know, darling, and it was beautiful. Everyone said it was the nicest one yet." I hung up before I said something that would snap the thread I'd been walking for years. In the car, I sat behind the wheel with my hands still in my lap. I didn't start the engine, didn't cry either, just stared ahead at my own reflection in the dark windshield. Something had ended. Not with yelling, not even with betrayal that felt fresh, but with the silent confirmation of a long truth. This wasn't the first time. I had been the one who remembered birthdays, who covered the cost when someone's card got declined, who made sure Grandma had a ride to the doctor. I planned, paid, and followed up, and when I wasn't there, somehow the party still happened. It just didn't have me in it. I thought about the messages I sent earlier that week. "Still good for Friday? What's the final head count?" No replies, not from Mom, not from Darcy, not from anyone. They all knew I'd be there. They just decided I shouldn't be. And now, it all made sense. 2 weeks ago, Colby, my cousin, had let something slip. We'd bumped into each other at Kroger and he'd said, "If you show up Friday, just keep it chill, okay?" I'd laughed it off. Thought he meant family drama, but he meant this. He knew they'd moved it, knew I wasn't invited, knew they planned to play dumb when I showed up like a damn fool. They rehearsed for this. They had a meeting, probably in the family group chat I wasn't part of anymore, and decided how to handle it if I arrived. She won't cause a scene. She never does. She's too polite to explode. They were right. I didn't explode. Instead, I opened my banking app. The charge stood bold and bright. Sterling Grill, $1,740, 16 people. Custom menu, wine upgrade. Even the vegan entree for Darcy's new lifestyle. I closed the app, opened notes, title, unpaid debts. Underneath I typed, birthday gifts for mom, $120. Vet bill for Darcy's dog, $480. New tires for dad's truck, $560. Rent top-off for Colby, $350. Sterling Grill dinner, $1,740. I kept typing. I wasn't writing for revenge. I was writing to remember. Because apparently they counted on me to forget. I didn't go straight to bed when I got home. Instead, I placed my keys on the console like I always do, changed into sweatpants, and stood in the kitchen longer than necessary, staring into the fridge like I expected answers to be tucked between the almond milk and last week's leftovers. Then I filled the kettle, switched it on, and leaned against the counter while the soft click of boiling water filled the silence that had followed me home. I didn't cry, not because I wasn't hurt, but because hurt wasn't new. It was just better disguised tonight, beneath tablecloths and wine glasses, sealed in a party I wasn't meant to attend. I made myself a cup of chamomile tea, the kind I always keep for nights when my chest feels too heavy to lie down. I carried it to the couch, sat cross-legged, and reopened the note on my phone. Then I reached for the leather-bound journal I hadn't touched since spring. I turned to a fresh page and wrote across the top in block letters, not mistakes, decisions. Because that's what this was, not a mix-up, not a misunderstanding, not family being quirky or bad with details. These were choices, and choices have patterns, and patterns leave trails. My hand slowed for a second, and suddenly I could hear Dad's voice again. A few weeks ago, I had casually asked him why I wasn't in the printed photo Darcy sent out after Easter brunch, the one she had framed and mailed to everyone in the family, including me. He had looked up from the recliner and said, "Darcy just wanted it simple. You know how sensitive she gets about aesthetics." Aesthetics. Right. And now I remembered that recliner. He had gushed about it. Top grain leather? Extra lumbar support? My back hasn't hurt since. Then mentioned, almost offhandedly, Darcy said I deserved some comfort for once. At the time, I thought it was sweet. Now it felt different. That chair wasn't a gift. It was a transaction. Silence in exchange for softness. Keep things calm, and you get to sit comfortably while your daughter is erased from every surface. A bribe, dressed up as a gesture. The taste of tea turned bitter in my mouth. I set the cup down, picked up my pen again, and flipped back to the front of the journal. I wanted a list, not just of money, but of patterns. Sentences that didn't feel right. Comments I brushed off, and faces that always turned away when I asked too many questions. Under the heading I scribbled, Dad's new recliner, Easter photo missing me. Darcy just wanted it simple. You know how sensitive she is? The call from HR back in June. That last one stopped me. I had nearly forgotten it. My supervisor, Lindsay, had asked if everything was okay at home. She'd leaned over my desk with one of those soft voices people use when they don't want to offend. "Your mom called," she said. "Said you've been having a rough patch, that maybe your workload should lighten." It had embarrassed me at the time. I'd chalked it up to my mom being overly concerned or trying to help. But now, sitting here with my journal open and my tea cooling beside me, I saw it differently. She wasn't helping. She was shaping a narrative, one where I was unstable, overwhelmed, maybe even unwell. That way, when I pulled away from the family, they had an explanation ready. "Poor Raina, she's been having a hard time." No one ever questioned why I distanced myself, because they already had their story rehearsed, A quiet script about the daughter who couldn't quite handle life, who didn't come around because she was too fragile, too distant, too dramatic. Meanwhile, Darcy gets the benefit of the doubt. Always. She cries and it's emotional depth. I speak up and it's a breakdown. Dad gets a chair. I get whispers. I closed the journal for a moment and opened my laptop. There was something I needed to do. I began pulling down bank statements, scanning Venmo history, emails with digital receipts, texts confirming I had covered this one again. I started sorting files into folders, not for taxes, not for budgeting, just for truth. Because one day I might need to hold this up and say, here, this is the weight I carried. My hands moved fast, focused, methodical. In the background, the city hummed through the windows. Somewhere below, someone was laughing too loud near the dumpster. Someone else slammed a car door. Life kept going, and I sat in my quiet corner gathering evidence not to punish, but to finally understand. I clicked into a Word doc and titled it Family Ledger. Page 1, bullet points. Page 2, screenshots. Page 3, a spreadsheet. I didn't even realize how late it had gotten until I glanced at the clock and saw 1:04 a.m. blinking in gentle defiance. Before logging off, I went back to the first page. At the very top, I typed, I am not crazy. They are simply consistent. Then I copied that line and pasted it at the top of every single page. By the time I finally lay down, it was past 2:30 a.m. I didn't sleep much. My body went through the motions, lights off, covers pulled up, but my brain refused to shut down. There was a rhythm to my thoughts, looping like static behind my eyelids. By 6:45, I was back at my desk, reheating the coffee I'd never finished. No makeup, no breakfast, just me in an oversized sweatshirt, hair still in last night's bun, face blank but alert. I opened the family ledger again and clicked into the spreadsheet. There was one line I hadn't filled out yet. A purchase I remembered only because of the bank alert that flagged it at the time. A luxury spa package. It had seemed odd then. I never booked spa days, but I figured maybe it was a duplicate charge from a gift card I'd bought for a coworker. Now, I wasn't so sure. I logged into my bank portal, then opened a separate tab for my credit report. It wasn't paranoia anymore. It was process. Scrolling through the report, I passed familiar entries. My student loan, my car payment, the apartment I'd lived in for 5 years. And then I saw it. A credit card I had never opened, issued through a boutique rewards program. Initial balance, $3,200. Recent charge, a stay at a mountain resort in Gatlinburg, followed by shopping at 2 designer outlets and a pet grooming salon. I don't have a dog. I don't take spa weekends. I don't own anything designer. But the mailing address used for the account was my parents' home. The phone number on the file, Darcy's. I recognized the last 4 digits instantly. I stared at the screen. My skin didn't go cold. My stomach didn't drop. It was stranger than that. It felt like confirmation. Like someone finally turned on the light in a room I always knew was too quiet. She did this. She used my name. I kept digging. 3 years ago, I'd applied for a pre-approval on a home loan. I was tired of renting. The numbers made sense. My credit was decent. But the bank flagged a rental delinquency that tanked my eligibility. At the time, I assumed it was some clerical mix-up. I hadn't rented anything outside Lexington in years. Now, on the report, I saw it. A defaulted lease. Address, 1 county over. Name on the lease, mine. Co-occupant, unknown. Damage fee, $1,900. Status, unpaid. I remembered it then. Darcy had moved in with a guy back in 2019. Some finance bro with a motorcycle and a fake southern drawl. They broke up within months, and she moved back in with mom and dad. I didn't put my name on the lease, she'd said at the time. No point. He had better credit. Now I knew the truth. She didn't put her name down. She put mine, because my credit was clean. My name had weight, and she counted on me never checking close enough to notice. I stood from the chair and paced the room once, then twice. I didn't scream, didn't throw anything. I pulled out a yellow legal pad, uncapped a pen, and wrote in large block letters across the top, "They never thought I'd look." Then underlined it 3 times. They didn't think I'd question the missing photo, the unpaid loan, the overcharged card. They thought I'd smile and carry it like I always had, and I almost did, for years. But now I was looking, closely, and not just at Darcy. Mom, who always said, "You're too serious, sweetheart, let things go." Dad, who muttered, "You know how she gets," anytime I tried to bring up something uncomfortable. Even Colby, with his half-sympathetic glances and zippered lips. They all let it happen. I minimized the credit report and opened a new browser window. Searched. How to report identity theft, FTC clicked through. Step 1, file a report. Step 2, contact companies. Step 3, create recovery plan. I wasn't ready to file anything just yet, but I downloaded the form, saved the PDF, created a folder on my desktop, Darcy use of identity evidence. My breath stayed even. My chest didn't tighten. This wasn't panic. This was preparation. And as I sorted the documents, my inbox pinged. Subject: Alert. A new address was added to your credit file. I clicked it open. The zip code stared back at me. Familiar. I narrowed my eyes, leaned forward. I knew that zip. Darcy's ex lived there. I remembered the party she threw in that apartment. The one I wasn't invited to but saw on Instagram. Her clinking champagne, wearing a silk robe I didn't recognize, the caption reading, "When your man treats you like royalty." That wasn't her apartment. That was mine, at least on paper. I closed the email and reopened the ledger. Then I scrolled to the top of the document and repeated the words again out loud. I typed the address next to the latest charge, and just below it, in all caps, "Report, if another address is added." I didn't leave the apartment the next morning. I didn't check the weather, didn't change out of my fleece robe, didn't open the blinds. There was only one light on, the one above my desk, and it bathed the room in this muted yellow haze that made the whole place feel like a waiting room for something I hadn't named yet. I sat staring at the Word document where I'd added Darcy's latest address, but my mind drifted somewhere else. A memory I hadn't wanted to revisit came rushing back, as if my body had decided the only way forward was through. It was 6 months ago. We were at brunch. Some overpriced place with smoked salmon and mimosas served in mason jars like that made it charming. Mom had insisted we all come because, in her words, it's been too long since we all smiled at the same table, which even then, I knew was code for, "Come pretend with us." I'd shown up late on purpose. Darcy had arrived early, of course she had, basking in some unspoken role she was born to fill and never had to earn. I remember Aunt Adele, halfway through her second drink, nudging Darcy and laughing. "Hope you put something in the will for me, kiddo. You know I raised you just as much as your mom." Darcy smiled wide, raised her glass, and said, "Maybe I left you the silverware. Family heirlooms, right?" Everyone laughed. I didn't. I felt something tighten in my gut. Not jealousy, not yet, but a flicker of something colder. Darcy wasn't joking, not completely, and nobody found it strange that she, of all people, was the one being asked about the will. That had been my first sign. I just didn't know it at the time. Back in my apartment, I reached for my laptop. A sudden instinct made me search my inbox for anything tagged estate or Elwood Trust. I found an old thread I didn't remember seeing, probably because I hadn't been meant to see it. The subject line read, "Final copy, Elwood Family Living Will Sender, Clayton S. McDonough, Attorney at Law, I was CC'd. Probably by mistake." I clicked it. The document loaded slowly, like it was taking its time preparing to punch me in the chest. The first page looked standard. Legalese, formatting, the same seal I remembered from when Grandpa passed. Page 2 hit like a freight train. There were line items, allocations, asset divisions. Darcy was listed in every paragraph. Jewelry, cars, financial instruments, property, everything with a value, sentimental or otherwise, had a tag next to her name. My name wasn't there, not once. Not even in the section titled Family Memorabilia. Nothing. But it got worse. Buried deep on page 5 was a clause I didn't know existed. I read it twice, then a third time. Any beneficiary who contests the contents or legality of this document forfeits any and all future standing, financial or social, as a member of the Elwood estate, to the fullest extent permissible by law. Financial or social, they weren't just cutting me out of the inheritance, they were erasing me. A disowning without the ceremony, without a confrontation, just paperwork and a clause buried under a brunch invitation and a silver-plated lie. I closed my eyes and let the silence fill me. They'd written me out quietly, efficiently, as if I were the family pet who ran away once and never made it home. No obituary, no phone call, just gone. My breath came back in a steady rhythm, not heavy, not rushed. It felt controlled, like something ancient had cracked, but instead of screaming, I sharpened. I opened a new tab in my family ledger spreadsheet, labeled it Legal Isolation, Evidence of Premeditated Exclusion. In the notes column, I added, Brunch, May, Estate Joke, Darcy plus Aunt Adele, Attorney Clayton McDonough, Will Clause, Forfeiture if contested, CC'd by accident, 9:42 a.m. timestamp. I copied the will into the folder, took screenshots, saved backups. This was no longer about feelings. This was architecture. This was design. I stood up from the desk and walked slowly toward the hallway mirror. The one I used before job interviews, before first dates, before every attempt at being the version of myself that wouldn't get discarded. I stared into my own reflection. No tears, just eyes that had finally stopped blinking away the obvious. They don't want a daughter, I whispered. They want a vault with no opinions and no receipts. I let that sentence sit for a second before I reached for my phone. I scrolled past old contacts, past family numbers, past Darcy's name, which I'd renamed months ago to Do Not Engage. I dialed Legal Aid of Kentucky. The phone rang, a clear, steady tone. Then a voice answered, Legal Aid of Kentucky, how can we assist you? I didn't hesitate. My name is Raina Elwood, I said calmly, and I'd like to report financial identity misuse within my immediate family. The call with legal aid lasted 52 minutes. They were patient, measured, not surprised. The woman on the line, her name was Rachel, had a voice like rain on concrete, soft but grounded. She asked the right questions, the ones I'd been dreading. When did you first notice the accounts in question? Can you verify your original signatures? Is there any indication of who may have impersonated you? I walked her through what I had, spreadsheets, emails, transaction history, saved audio. She listened in a way that made me feel like I wasn't just imagining the cracks. She said something that stuck with me long after the call ended. Identity theft in families is more common than people think. What's rare is someone brave enough to face it. Then she asked if there were any other accounts I'd forgotten. I almost said no, but something in me paused. The loan. I hadn't thought about it in months, maybe years, but I remembered the envelope, a tax form, FAFSA. It had come in my name. I assumed it was a system glitch. After all, I hadn't applied for school in over a decade. But Darcy had, briefly. There was a week back in 2020 where she swore she was going back for her RN license. It didn't last. She dropped out before midterms. Said she wasn't made for classrooms. At the time, I'd let it go. I let everything go. I searched my inbox and within seconds found the message I hadn't realized was real. Hi Raina, this is Jody from Kentucky Financial Aid. Just confirming your co-signature for Darcy Elwood's student loan application. I'd ignored it, thought it was phishing. But it wasn't. It was real. My pulse didn't spike. I didn't gasp. I just sat still and let the realization settle like dust on a bookshelf you stop pretending you'd clean. Darcy didn't forge that alone. To get a student loan, there are calls, confirmations, phone verifications. So I called the number from the email, claimed I was a prospective student trying to understand the loan verification process. They transferred me to records. I asked gently if there was a way to review the approval recording on file from 2020. She said yes, transcripts were available by request. 10 minutes later, a PDF hit my inbox. I opened it and read my mother's voice. Not literally, but the rhythm, the phrasing, the tone. Yes, I confirm. That's my account. I've agreed to support my daughter's application. I knew that voice. The tiny breath before she speaks, the habit of answering a question with a statement. It was Blythe, my mother. She hadn't just watched Darcy take from me. She helped her do it. I sat motionless, then reached for my legal pad and wrote in bold, ink-heavy strokes, "Love is not debt," then underlined it, and again, and again. An hour later, I was in my car. No music, no makeup, no warning. I drove straight to the house, the same brick ranch in the same neighborhood with the same wind chime I bought for Mother's Day 2 years ago, still hanging by the porch light. I knocked once, then walked in. She was in the kitchen, folding dish towels like the world wasn't burning down around her. "Raina," she said. "What a surprise." "Not really," I replied. "This has been coming." She opened her mouth to say something else, but I laid the folder on the table with a quiet, final thud. "This is everything I've ever paid for," I said. "Every bill, every deposit, every quiet little rescue mission you pretended I offered instead of what you expected." I flipped the folder open to the transcript. "And here's what you signed without me." She squinted, pretended not to understand. I didn't raise my voice. "You posed as me to secure a loan for Darcy," I said plainly. "Then let her drop out and let the debt hang on my name. You helped her forge that signature. You helped her fake the call." "Raina, it's not what you think." "No," I said, cutting her off. "It's exactly what I think." I took one slow step forward, never breaking eye contact. "You taught me that love means sacrifice," I continued. "But you taught Darcy something else." Her brow furrowed. "You taught her that love means debt, that if she needs something, someone else will pay for it, that if she messes up, I'll clean it, that if she lies, I'll stay quiet." Her lip trembled. I raised my hand, palm up. "You say one more word," I said, "and I walk out of here and straight to the district attorney's office." She froze. "I have enough now to prove identity fraud. Forgery, conspiracy." Her eyes welled. "I don't want your tears. I want the truth." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Silence. For once. I picked up the folder, walked to the door, turned back just once and said, "And this time I will press charges if I find one more charge in my name." Then I stepped outside into the evening, where the sun was setting in bands of orange and red across the horizon, like the sky itself was burning it all down for me. I walked in, flipped on the lamp, and sat at my desk with the same expressionless calm I'd carried all day. No shaking, no fuming, just movement. I opened my laptop and pulled up the spreadsheet I'd already been working on in private, the same one with every dollar I'd ever handed over like a dutiful servant no one thought to thank. This time, I finished it. Every transaction was dated, labeled, and cross-referenced with a receipt or bank transfer, tuition for Darcy's semester of pretending to be a nurse, the deposit for Dad's truck tires after he claimed the bank froze his card, the emergency rent bump when Colby's girlfriend kicked him out, but he couldn't stomach a shelter, grocery bills that mysteriously doubled when Mom didn't have time to shop before holidays. Even the cruise for Blythe's birthday she called a miracle gift from her husband, though his Venmo history never blinked. $11,680.47. I exported it into a polished PDF. At the bottom, I added one line in bold. "Moving forward, all support will be invoiced. Family-free labor." No emojis, no footnotes, just truth. Then I opened the old family group chat, the one they only used when they needed help moving couches, babysitting, or pretending to care during holidays. I attached the file, left the subject line, "Reimbursement request, Raina E," and hit send. No preamble, no explanation. 10 seconds later, the little read ticks started appearing, one by one. Then, "Darcy," "Dad," and then nothing. Until my phone buzzed with a private message from Blythe. "If you're doing this out of spite, you'll regret it. Don't forget what you've done." No punctuation, just venom wearing motherly concern like cheap perfume. What had I done? Paid, covered, cleaned. I didn't respond. Instead, I took a slow breath and went back to my computer, opened the legal aid folder, drafted the FTC identity theft affidavit, dragged in the loan transcript, attached the forged FAFSA call recording, linked the financial aid office contact. Then I filed the report. 2 hours later, I got the email confirmation. "Your case ID is 48,629 FAM. A fraud investigator will reach out within 72 hours. Still, my hands were steady, until another alert came in, pinging from an unknown address. IRS Fraud Division. Confirmation new report filed. Filed against me. Claim, tax evasion. Year 2019. Allegation, falsified deduction. I knew exactly what this was. That was the year I'd paid their overdue property tax so they wouldn't lose the house. I'd filed it under a legal deduction. Had the check copy notarized, had followed every rule. Now suddenly someone, anonymously, was accusing me of fraud? I didn't need to guess. I knew her rhythms too well. This wasn't Darcy's move. This was Blythe's. I didn't scream. I didn't panic. I opened my tax file, compiled the scanned receipt, notarization, and email from the county clerk, forwarded them all to my legal contact. No commentary, just facts. Then I opened my messages, scrolled down past the latest notification, past the threat dressed as maternal guidance, and tapped on Colby's name. I typed, "Would you testify if needed?" It took him almost an hour to reply. I stared at my ceiling during that time, watching the shadows of the city stretch across my walls like fingers trying to pull me back into silence. Then finally my phone lit up. Yes. I stared at it. Then another message arrived. "And I've got something else you should probably see." My chest didn't tighten. My palms didn't sweat. For the first time in years, I felt calm. Not because the war was over, but because I finally understood. This wasn't vengeance. It was accountability. And I wasn't alone anymore. The next morning, I arrived at work 10 minutes early, just like I always did. My shoes made soft clicks across the laminate floor as I moved through the quiet hallway, nodding politely to the receptionist before sliding into my cubicle. I powered up my monitor, opened my inbox, and there it was. Subject, scheduled wellness check-in. HR meeting at 11 a.m. At first I thought it might be routine, but the tone was odd. It used words like stability, support, and resources available if you're struggling. My stomach coiled. I barely had time to process it before my supervisor stopped by my desk with a forced half smile. "Hey, Raina," she said, hesitating too long. "Just checking in. You've seemed a little off lately. Is everything okay at home? Are you feeling balanced?" My heart slowed, then beat hard once. I kept my expression neutral. "Yes," I replied evenly. "Everything's fine." She gave a small nod, but her eyes darted. She didn't believe me. And then it hit me. This wasn't concern. This was fallout. I thought back to a colleague's awkward question weeks ago. "Your mom mentioned you've been a bit withdrawn?" I had brushed it off then. I shouldn't have. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my notes, then texted Colby. "Coffee, today, noon. Barrow and Maine. Need to see what you meant." He replied within seconds. "On my way." At 11:45, I clocked out for lunch early and walked the 4 blocks to the coffee shop. Colby was already at a table in the corner, black hoodie pulled tight over his face like he wanted to disappear. When I slid into the seat across from him, he didn't say anything. Just slid his phone across the table. A screenshot was open, a group chat I'd never seen before. "Fam core. No Raina. Darcy." "Raina won't show, she never does. Too dramatic. Blythe. If she does come, just act surprised. Keep things light." "Dad, we're not doing another scene like Christmas 2018? Darcy again." "Exactly. Just confuse her. She'll leave." I stared at the screen. I wasn't surprised, but I still felt something sharp lodge behind my ribs. Not because I hadn't guessed, but because it was real. Written. Shared. They had planned my absence like an inconvenience, like someone preparing for rain at a wedding. Just in case. Bring an umbrella, and a lie. Colby looked guilty. His voice was low. "I should have said something earlier," he murmured. I was scared. "You knew about this." "I didn't participate, I just didn't stop it." I nodded slowly. "Are you ready to say that to a judge?" I asked, my voice clear. He blinked. "Yeah, I am. They made you the problem, but they built the trap." I sipped my coffee, staring out the window, watching people go by who didn't know any of this, who weren't raised to confuse silence with grace. Back home, I compiled the final folder. Family systems documentation for court. Inside, I placed everything: screenshots, recordings, receipts, transcripts. I attached the file to an email and sent it to my attorney with the subject, "Ready for submission." Then I went back to the group chat, the same one I had dropped the invoice into. This time I sent only one message. "You've told your story, now I'll tell mine, under oath." No reply, not right away. I was about to set my phone down when it buzzed. A message from Darcy. "You really want to ruin everything over money?" I stared at the screen, then typed back. I'm not ruining anything. I'm ending it. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was standing on the edge of something about to collapse. I felt like I was the one holding the match, and I wasn't afraid to strike it. I sent the group text at 10:03 a.m. sharp. Dinner, Friday, one last conversation. No pleasantries, no guilt-soaked emojis, just time and place. Colby arrived 5 minutes early to pick me up, already waiting outside in his truck. I got in, holding the black folder like a document of surrender. But it wasn't mine this time. The house looked the same. That beige sameness that never aged and never changed, like it was preserved in resentment and Lysol. Blythe answered the door with a voice so sugary I could almost hear the aftertaste. Well, she said, this is a surprise. No, it's not, I replied. You knew this was coming. She opened her mouth, maybe to pretend she didn't understand, but I'd already walked past her. The dining table still had the same centerpiece, dried lavender in a chipped glass vase. My father sat at the far end, eyes darting to Colby, then to the folder. Darcy leaned against the wall, arms crossed, performing her usual indifference. I didn't sit. I placed the folder in the center of the table and opened it slowly. These are the charges, I said. Darcy rolled her eyes, but I didn't look at her. I read aloud. Item 1. Federal student loan application submitted under my name without consent. I held up the signature page. Item 2. Apartment lease defaulted in 2020. Name listed. Raina Elwood. Tenant. Not me. I dropped the printed screenshot. Item 3. Tax deduction for property paid in full by me, falsely reported as fraudulent to the IRS. A pause. A breath. Item 4. Identity theft complaint filed, pending investigation. Silence. Darcy scoffed. Jesus, Raina, this is a witch hunt. No, I said. This is a record. You made your decisions. I made mine. You're blowing this up over money? I'm ending it over theft, lies, smearing my name so you could keep pretending you were the good one. She stepped forward. You think this is justice? Tearing your own family apart in front of strangers? I stayed still. The only person tearing this family apart is the one who used my credit to go to Cancun and skipped rent for a year. Colby cleared his throat softly but didn't interrupt. Blythe finally spoke. If you go through with this, if you file this publicly, you'll lose everything. The house, the trust, the family. I turned to her, calm. I already filed. She blinked. I signed away my claim on the estate yesterday morning. The will clause doesn't scare me. I don't want anything that requires silence to keep. My father opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Blythe sat down. The sugar in her voice had gone flat. Colby reached into his jacket and pulled out a check. He slid it across the table to me. My half for the reunion dinner. I owed you. I didn't touch it, just nodded. Thank you. You're the only one who ever asked how I was doing. Not what I could pay for. Darcy was pacing now, her voice raised. You don't know what you're doing. You're throwing away decades over what? Spreadsheets? I picked up the folder and closed it. No, I said. I'm finally walking away from a room that's been burning for years. I turned to the door, paused, looked over my shoulder. And next time you want someone to foot the bill, I said, at least have the decency to invite them. I walked out. Colby followed. The screen door creaked and slammed behind us. No one said anything. But for once, that silence didn't feel like exile. It felt like judgment. It felt like a verdict. It had been 61 days since I'd walked out of that house. Not that anyone was counting, but I was. Now, I sat on a small wooden porch overlooking a patch of sunlit gravel and lazy mountain breeze in Asheville. A cup of strong black coffee warmed my hand. No drama, no buzzing notifications, no guilt shaped like a mother's sigh. Just air. Just sky. My apartment was small, but mine. The books on the shelves were alphabetized, not because anyone expected them to be, but because I liked them that way. I'd traded Lexington's noise for the sound of trees rustling in late afternoon wind. Nobody here called me dramatic, or difficult, or selfish. Nobody called me at all, honestly. I hadn't blocked them. I didn't need to. Silence had its own algorithms. Eventually, it just maintained itself. I didn't regret pressing charges, But I didn't obsess over it either. The state would move on its own time. The courts would do what courts do. My part was done. I wasn't waiting for retribution. Just release. One morning, while folding a fresh load of laundry and listening to a podcast about Appalachian wildflowers, a message lit up my phone from Colby. He sent a photo. It was the old family dining table, dismantled, propped by the curb next to a sagging mailbox and a free sign taped to it. His message read, "No more pretending, they sold it." I stared at the screen for a long second. Then I typed back, "Let them. It never seated all of us anyway." The photo stayed in my gallery, untouched, not because I wanted to remember, but because I didn't need to delete it to move on. I spent that afternoon repotting a peace lily on the windowsill. The air smelled like rain and fresh earth. My neighbor across the hall, Miss Harris, knocked just before sunset and handed me a still warm peach cobbler. "Saw your lights on," she smiled. "Figured you might want dessert." I laughed, softly, fully. You figured right. We stood there for a few seconds longer than needed. It was the kind of pause where nothing needed to be said to mean something. That night, I pulled out my journal. Not the ledger, not evidence, just paper. I wrote, "I thought I'd miss them more, but I think I just missed the version of me who thought they loved me right." I flipped the page, wrote again, "Blood is thicker than water, but respect is thicker than both." And underneath, in smaller print, "I am no longer applying for roles I never agreed to audition for." Before bed, I scrolled through social media. A cousin posted pictures from a family gathering. I wasn't in them. No one mentioned my name. Darcy, I noticed, looked different. Her smile wasn't as practiced. The caption underneath a selfie with some vague new friend read, "Some people grow through what they go through." I almost smiled. Let her grow. Let them all. I had grown too, but not around them. Away from them. There's a difference. One last page, one last sentence, before I turned out the lights. "My name is Raina. I used to be the good daughter. Now I'm just me. And finally, that's enough." Sometimes the hardest thing isn't walking away. It's realizing you were never truly welcome in the first place. For a long time, I thought being a good daughter meant being quiet, compliant, and endlessly available. But I've learned that love without respect is not love. It's control dressed in tradition. If you're watching this and something in my story feels familiar, if you've ever been made to feel small so someone else could feel big, know this. You are not alone. You are not crazy. You are not difficult. You are simply aware in a family that prefers denial. Healing doesn't always come with apologies or reconciliation. Sometimes it comes with space, with truth, with the courage to say, "That was never love," and build something better for yourself. So I'll leave you with this. Have you ever had to walk away from family, not out of hate but out of survival? Have you ever found peace in silence that used to scare you? Drop a comment below and tell me, where are you watching from? What part of this story hit home for you? And hey, if this story spoke to your heart, if you felt even one sentence echo inside you, comment one below or share your own experience. And if not, that's okay too. Tell me why. I want to hear from you. If you want more stories like this, real, raw, and rooted in truth, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because sometimes, the stories we hear aren't just entertainment, they're reminders we're not alone in what we've survived. Thanks for being here. See you in the next story.